we're going to be recording. So let me just check here. Oh, okay, good. One more minute and then we are good to go. So I hope everybody is fastened for a very enjoyable ride. I mean, learning, if you think learning is enjoyable like I do, I think you guys are in for a really good session. So, okay, let's see, wait, Victor's having a little bit of a problem, but we'll see what happens with him. Okay, so we are going to start our class. Oh, I think Victor has made it. Okay, so welcome everyone. This is our PPSIR new agent training. Some of you are brand new, some of you need or want a little bit more of a refresher. Know that this class is available to you after you quote unquote graduate, so that you have a place to go where you may find it beneficial to repeat later on. We go through a tremendous amount of material, and sometimes it can get a little overwhelming. So we will discuss how we work and what we do in this group, but we'll start with the background. So I am Amy DeBellis, for those of you who, well, nobody really knows me, and I am the Director of Training. I have been in the real estate business for over 30 years. I am third generation, which is how I got started. My grandparents, then my parents, and then me. And when they wanted me to take over the office, I threw the keys back and said, "No, thank you." So working for somebody else is way easier than running your own. I was an agent for over 16 years. I was a manager for 12 years or 13 years. I've been the Director of Training for several years now. And I think that training is huge. And what I will say is, in 31 years, you never stop learning in this business. I learn something every day. So believe me, there's always going to be things for you to learn. And so don't think that this is just the beginning of your education and your careers. So what I think I'd like to do first, before we do all into anything, is to have everybody introduce themselves, tell us what office you are with now and what you did before you were a realtor. So I will start with Michelle, just your name, your office, and what you did. So
Hi.
Michelle.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Michelle Duncan. I will be with the Summit office, just started. And I was in finance and financial recruiting before this.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay, great. Let's go to Alyssa.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Murphy. I am currently in the Franklin Lakes office. Prior to getting my real estate license, I've been in veterinary medicine for 35 years, which consumed way too much of my time, and I've missed just about everything that my kids have done. So looking forward to having just a little bit more of a less structured schedule, if you will.
Terrific, terrific. And Marion? You may well stay.
Sorry, my mouse.
That's okay, don't worry.
Sorry. So hi, I'm in the Summit office. I joined just about a month ago. I have had 1 year of experience. I was actually in the Madison office for a year with Keeneland Latman, but wanted to move to Summit because that's where my sphere is. And prior to that, I was in corporate America. I was in finance for CPG. I've traveled and lived around the world with these companies, with CPGs. I was a CFO. So I too retired from corporate America to have a life.
And you think real estate's the way to go, huh?
There you go.
This is an interesting career. Okay, Anne, why don't you introduce yourself? Everybody take yourselves off of mute for now. And so we can, make it easier for everybody. You can either use a space bar or bottom left-hand corner microphone.
Okay, hi,
Ed
I'm
in.
Anne. Hi, I just am joining the Sotheby's office in Summit, basically now. And I worked for about 10 years in marketing and business development within the advertising and marketing technology space.
Wonderful. Marketing will come in very, very handy for you.
I hope so, yes.
It will, believe me. David?
Hi, Dave Hausman. I'm an engineer, MBA. Ran a family business for 27 years, sold it. I've been retired for 4 years and driving Uber. And I decided to get my passengers to do real estate.
Excellent. Excellent. You never know where your sources of business are going to come from, right? Rachel?
Hi, I'm also in the Summit office. Seems like we have a lot of Summit.
We have a lot of Summits.
Great, yeah. So I was a teacher. I was a teacher for many years, and then when my kids were born, I was a stay-at-home mom. So I was
Wonderful.
a stay-at-home mom for many years. Raised my kids here in Summit. We lived here for 11 years now, and this is something I've always wanted to do, and the timing was just never right. And now my kids are how old are they? They're 10 and 12, and I thought this was the right time, so I'm really excited.
Young children are, when you have young children in this business, it is a wonderful, wonderful way to get business. I did the most business I ever did in my life when my daughter was little. It was really good. And Daralex, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, Daralex.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Okay, so my name is Daralex Almonte. I just joined the Sotheby's office in Westfield. I'm also a new agent. And then prior to this, I just got my bachelor's in psychology.
Wonderful. That will also help. It's amazing what
Yes.
hats we wear when we are realtors. Believe me, you will find that out.
Yeah,
You're
I'm like a
welcome.
therapist part-time. Thank you.
Oh, cool. We may start a little organization here. You never know. Ira.
Hi, my name is Ira Rothbaum. I've been a apparel executive for 35 years. I spent a lot of my time traveling globally, India, Bangladesh, China, Asia. The pandemic hit, things slowed down. I was kind of retiring from the garment business, and I was home in New Jersey, and my wife and kids and grandkids are all here. So we're not ready to go to Florida, and I wanted some action. So I thought that, the real estate business could give you some action, but it's not a 24/7 job. It's as much as you want to make out of it. So it seemed interesting for me to give it a shot. So here I am.
Wonderful.
I passed my test on the first try, so it's a step in the right direction.
You have no idea how many people fail the first time.
Yeah.
So, yay, you.
All right.
Ricardo.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. Good morning. Yes, my name is Ricardo Medrano. I am a new agent with the Sotheby's office in Westfield, which I look to as well. I've been around in the, I would say, communications world and broadcasting, but I've mostly been a private DJ, meaning I do private events, weddings, mitzvahs, sweet 16s, 15s, all that stuff, private events. I've been doing that for a while. So joining the Sotheby's team now.
Be interesting to see how and if you can tie those businesses together in some form of
course.
fun way.
Everyone who gets married wants to buy a house.
Oh, that's an easy one. That's an easy one, but I'm within your own marketing and things. There's some stuff you can do that might be fun.
Of course.
Pooja, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Welcome.
Hi, so I joined the Sotheby's Ridgewood office during the holidays, and I'm a relatively new agent. I got my license about 6 months ago, and prior to real estate, I was in fashion. I ran my own company. I built my own brand for almost 12 years, and it was all organic cotton athleisure, where we sold it to leading retailers across the nation, like Whole Foods Market, Stitch Fix, Wantable. So that's my background. I've always been an entrepreneur, and this is my next journey.
Wonderful. I actually would love to introduce you to one of our agents who was in my class, I think 2 classes ago, and she did exactly the same thing that you did, and she sold her business, and this is her next journey. So I love, that's one of the other things is listening to what everybody does. You don't realize how important that is within our industry, and we'll go forward a little bit more with that later. Joanne.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Joanne Mitchell, and I'm with the Montville office, and I recently affiliated with the company, but I'm licensed over 30 years. But as Amy said, you're always learning in this business, so that's why I'm here today.
Thank you. Victor?
Hi, everybody. Victor Luray. I have a real estate license for about 15 years out of Hoboken. I just worked with Jackie to move it over to the burbs here. I just moved to Chatham about 4 years ago. And as you said, Amy, just about 4 months ago, I noticed a huge spike in engagement after COVID with my 3.5-year-old twins being in school. So there's a lot of activity going on in the house and a lot, meeting parents and all. So I decided to move the license. It is still a part-time engagement for me. I sell solution software during the day in the artificial intelligence space, and just excited to jump in with all the tools and the training. Jackie thought it made sense for me to jump in as like a newbie again, which is great because I've been out of the loop, which is great.
Absolutely. Do you have twin boys, girls, both?
One and one.
Oh, very lucky.
Yeah.
I'm an identical twin. So.
Oh, are you really? Wow.
Yeah, you got it easy.
Too.
You too?
Yeah, I have a brother. He's 10 minutes older.
Oh, yeah, I have a sister. Because we're identical, so we have no choice. But that's so funny. Okay, so Shanna?
Shayna, yes. So I'm Shayna Sanchez. I'm with the Sotheby's office out of Westfield. I just want to say hello to Joanne over there. I was like, oh my gosh, Joanne. And yes, so I'm there. I have my own team. It's the Everlift group, which you guys have met. It's Derelict and Ricardo are on our team. And I've been in the business 8 years. I do this full time. And my 2 other assistants are on the call, Rhea and Laurel. They're here to just learn what we have to do for the basics so our team could run well. And what I did prior, I was the National Business Development Manager for Sprint. I ran public sector and government sector accounts, and I got into real estate because, like everyone on the call, I was burned out from corporate America, and it's the same thing. Lots of hours, lots of work, but at least I don't have to ask anybody for a day off, right? My clients are the ones who control that.
Amen.
Yeah.
That was well said, because a lot of people don't realize that.
Your clients really, I was working over Christmas Eve and on the holiday, and that's what we take off, you take off. But I hate agents who think that because it'll shut down. No, our clients need to get home. So that's the name of the business, right?
Yes, it is.
That's how I think.
A lot of people don't understand that. My favorite is when everybody says, well, I want a flexible schedule. And I just sort of chuckle, because that's the one thing, guys, that it's flexible, but it's not based on your schedule. It's
not
based
when you're
on
first
everyone
starting out.
else's schedule. So you just have to be prepared for that. And if that's your mindset, then you're going to be fine. So it's just a different mindset. Ray or Rhea?
Yes, hi, I'm Rhea. I'm Sheena's assistant. I'm here
Oh,
to
okay.
learn the system.
Okay, and Laurelyn
Yeah.
also? Okay, because I was wondering where we got those people from. Okay, good. That explains a lot. Okay, so what will I tell you? I will tell you that first, one of the things that I insist on is video. And why? Because just like this, Shayna knew Joanne, reached out. How cool. You guys are all new. A lot of you are from the same office. And it helps you learn about each other. It helps you with referrals. If you are in Alpine and somebody has somebody who wants to work in Westfield, you may say, you know what, that may not be my bailiwick, but I know somebody who's going to be able to help. So being new and being together and working together breeds familiarity. It also, just like I said that I want to introduce people, you become connectors. If you listen to what other people do, say, think, you might say, you know what, I've got somebody I'd like you to talk to. And it probably or may not have anything to do with real estate, but being a connector is a valuable, valuable tool in this business, putting things together. We have an incredible leadership team. It's run by Charlie Oppler, and he is our CEO, and he is 2021 past NAR president. Randy Ketive is our broker of record. Every day you walk into your office and there's a sign on the door and it says Randy Ketive, broker of record. She is all of our broker of record. And this will come in when we discuss dual agency and why that's important. She's also a Spitfire, and she will be running one of our classes, which will be on co-ops and condos. And then we have Michael Oppler, who is the COO, and he takes care of the back end, and he's also temporary manager of Ridgewood. We have Roberta Weisinger, who is our corporate attorney. We are very, very fortunate to have a corporate attorney. So how that works is if you find yourself having an issue, a concern, or a problem, you discuss it with your manager. And if the manager believes that Roberta needs to get involved, the manager will advise. She's there for guidance. She gives us the updates on things that are coming into our industry that we need to be aware of. And it's wonderful and very, very helpful. We have Hal Maxwell, who is a senior VP, and he comes to us as he was a president of Coldwell Banker for New Jersey and part of New York. And then we also have an incredible team of managers. So we are really, really blessed by having the best group of people in this company helping you grow. How the training works. We will have 12 sessions twice a week. So it's a 6-week class. What you all need to understand is that this is your business, and those who succeed treat it as such. If you think that you're working for somebody else, that's not your mindset, nor is that true. This is an independent contractor agreement. That's what we have. And you need to think of this in every way as your business, which is why we do business planning and why you need to think about the direction that you're going to go in. And in the beginning, you may say, I don't know what direction, but that's okay, because when we do business planning, it will help you and it will help you keep on track. But it also helps determine if the track is best for you. You may find 6 months into doing something, it's just not working, or it's just not working for you. You don't just stay with it, you change it, because you'll just hamster on a wheel, and you don't want to do that. So, self-evaluation is also incredibly important. Another thing that some of you may not be used to is that technically, as independent contractors, there is no accountability. Who are you accountable to? And when there is no accountability, people can get restless or get off track, and that's not helpful to you. So what I always suggest to people is to make sure you have an accountability partner. Now, that accountability partner can be anybody. It can be your spouse, if you're accountable to them because they want you to make X amount of money. It could be your manager. It could be a mentoring agent. It could be your team leader. It could be me. It could be anybody that you will value that will get the job done and make you accountable to yourself and to others. And with that is success. And what I will tell you is that the most successful agents have coaches, because they need to know how to improve their business. So in this position, you are never going to know everything. You're never going to have full direction unless that's you really know what you're doing. And working with people as accountable to other people will help make you successful. So please think about that because it is really, really important. What you will learn in this class is Real Estate 101. Nobody teaches, they all teach you real estate, right? You got that book, you read the book, you took the tests, and sadly, you won't use about 3/4 of the book. You won't even remember 3/4 of the book. You will do your jobs, you will learn how to do it well, and then once you've really gotten down to understanding it, knowing it, working it, that's when you start growing. And that's when you start taking a little bit more risks. You may dive more deeply into things, and that is terrific. Documents well, I also want to say nobody walks out of school learning how to be a real estate agent. Would you agree to that? Right? They never taught you how to be a real estate agent, but that's why there's a reason why they don't. And the reason why they don't is they want your broker to train you, to teach you, and to guide you. So that's why they really don't talk much about your progress or your position after you leave the class. We're going to go over how you read the documents in our Google Drive. Everything that I sent you with the link is in our training manual. Now, if you wanted to print your training manual, it will be this. I would suggest you don't, and for the reason that I do update the training manual, and as I update it, if you've printed it, you may miss an update. And I do try, and if you do print it, I do try to put new next to it so that you know it's new or newer than what you think. And lastly, if you miss a class, I will be recording the sessions. Just give me an email, send me an email, and I will get you the class. The class, it is your responsibility to attend. It is important for you to be here. You do get much more out of active and training that's live. But if you need to miss a class, there are times that you're going to have orientation and that's going to overlap, and that's okay. So don't worry about it. Just let me know and we will go from there. So you will also receive a Zoom invite from me 1 hour before class, just as a reminder with a link. Ask questions when you have them. I don't want you to hold questions to the end because I want you to ask them when you have that question. Because if you have that question, maybe somebody else does too. And it's really, really important to ask it when we're all in it, not at the end when you have to remember what the problem was and what you didn't understand. And then should you have any special issues during class or whatever, please call me directly and I will be happy to help you. So now I am going to, where are we? I am going to just share my screen for a minute, and I am going to just ask you all to make sure you all have your email signatures done. A lot of people forget it, and I'm going to tell you it's so important and so necessary to put your full email signature on. And the reason is, even for me, there are times that agents email me, well, a lot of times they email me, and they don't have their signature, and I then have to go to a different source to look them up. Now, if I have to do that, but I have the tools to look them up, if a client or a customer is trying to reach you, put your Gmail signature or an email signature, wherever it is. And this paper will tell you how, if you don't know. And then this is the sample of what your email signature should look like. You could even go further and ask marketing for a disclaimer regarding wire fraud. So some agents have that on there. Some agents have their photograph. Some agents have Sotheby's logo. Primarily, this information in a signature is all you need. So this is in your training manual. So I want to show you how to read our training manual. So this is what the training manual looks like when you log in with that link. And how it is set up is you just go by the very first number, and that's the section we're in. So we are section 1. Everything that we are talking about today is all number 1 here. And everything is titled for you. Section 2, etc. So as we go, that is how you can follow along. I do give homework assignments, and homework assignments basically are to read all of the material in the section that we have just covered, so that you have additional information that we didn't have time to get to. Not a lot of reading, but necessary for you to get some background information on some of the subjects that we're talking about. There is also a glossary of terms for you so that you are familiar with some terminology that you may have forgotten in class. And then we are going to, let me start with codes of ethics. Let's see, we did our signature. Okay, so what I want to talk to you about first, we're going to do this later. So let's stop sharing for a minute. Okay, so first I want to ask, who can tell me what the difference is between a customer and a client? This they did teach in school. Anybody? Well, it's kind of important that you remember what it
Isn't
is.
a customer, isn't a customer just someone who's just looking? The customer just looking, the client you're actually working with.
Yes. So you have to remember that almost everyone will start as your customer, but a customer is not your client. Your client becomes a client when they've signed a listing agreement, a contract, or a buyer's agent agreement. Until then, they are your customers. So I love when people say, I got 3 clients from my open house. Oh, 3 clients? Did you sign? Well, no, but I'm working with them. Then you got 3 customers. So understand it, because terminology is important. Now, code of ethics. I don't want to really kill the code of ethics, because hopefully you have learned them. But what I will say is this: every new year comes a new set of code of ethics. And in this time, there are some changes. So I'm just going to talk to you about the code, the changes, and we're just going to talk about the articles in generalities. So with the code of ethics, it's separated into 3 groups, right? You've got duties to your clients and your customers, duty to the public, and duty to other realtors. And within that, you have Article 1, which is protect the best interest of your client. 2, no misrepresentations, exaggerations, or hiding facts about the property. 3, realtors should cooperate with each other unless it's not in the best interest of your client. Now, under 3, there are two changes that came up as of January 1 this year. And it's 3.9, and it's realtors shall not provide access to listed properties on terms other than those established by the owner or the seller. So it's basically the owner or the seller dictates how things are shown and handled. And so that is just laid out. And then a standard of practice 3.11, realtors may not refuse to cooperate on the basis of a broker's race, color, religion, sex, disability, familiar status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. This is very important because we have another one that we're going to go over in 10. They're very specific about what realtors are able to do. And fair housing, we take it very, very seriously. And so do, the realtors as far as protecting our classes. 4 and 5 is disclose any personal interest in a property. So if you own a property, you must say so. Article 6, through 8. Let me just make sure there's no changes on that one. No, I don't think so. Okay, good. 9, all documents pertaining to the transaction should be presented to the buyer and seller in understandable terms, which is why we teach you everything and we read everything so that you know how to explain things to others. And then Article 10 is duties to the public. Now, Article 10 started with the most important article, which was 10.5, but they added or changed, I should say, 10.3. And 10.3 says, realtors shall not print, display, or circulate any statement, advertisement with respect to selling or renting of a property that indicates any preference, limitations, or discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, disability, familiar status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. So this was changed or elaborated to add. And then 10.5, I really needed you to understand because this one changes. This one involves you as a realtor, but also as a person. But if you're a realtor, you must adhere to this on your personal time. And what it says is realtors must not use harassing speech, hate speech, epithets, or slurs based on race, color, religion, sex, disability, familiar status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. And what happened with that was that it was determined that if you were a realtor, well, this actually happens, I'll give you the instance. As realtor, this gentleman owned a condominium and he was sitting on the little deck outside his unit, and he must have seen a person of color in the parking lot and screamed inappropriate words and said, "You don't belong here, whites only." Well, he was reported to the realtors group because he used, inappropriate speech. And yes, you could lose your license for that, even if you're at your own home on your own time. We are held to a higher standard. So you just need to know that. Okay. 11 is to provide clients. 10, all of it is on discrimination. So everything having to do with discrimination would be Article 10. Article 11 is providing clients with competent services only within a realtor's professional scope. So what that means, everybody is so, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. You can do that. But at a certain point, you are not acting in the best interest of your client, you're acting in the best interest of yourself. So if you are a residential realtor and you have somebody that calls you up and says, I would like to buy a $10 million building. You're like, everybody get out of my way. I can do this. Can you really do it? Do you know anything about commercial real estate? Do you think that even commercial real estate resembles residential real estate? The answer would be no. So in that case, be careful. Your zeal or your zest to do something may get you into trouble. So what might you do? You might go to your manager and say, I have an opportunity to sell a $10 million building. Which agent is incredibly strong in commercial that I can team up with? And then you get the advantage of learning on the job. You're splitting your commission with somebody who's going to help you get that job done. And that's one way of learning, or you can take classes. It's also the same thing as when you work in Alpine and somebody wants to see a house in Westfield. How well do you know that Westfield market? Could you do it? Sure, you could. But if they're going to ask you what school district is the best, where do I want to live? What is the better area? How can I get to transportation? If you don't know these answers, are you being fair to the client or the customer? So these are the things that you want to think about. And that's also within our code of ethics. So if you do something that's out of your zone, hopefully you do it well. 12 is no false or misleading advertising. Hold on one second. 13 is don't break the law. If for some reason you have broken the law and you're up on charges, just make sure the real estate commission knows about it. And when it is finalized, whether you are found innocent or guilty, the real estate commission needs to know. Some crimes and some things like that might be reason that your license may be suspended or pulled. And then 14 would be cooperate with realtors boards investigating proceedings if charged with a violation, because realtors, we police ourselves first through code of ethics, through grievance, mediation, and arbitration. And believe it or not, courts won't hear the case unless they've gone through those proper channels before, unless it's strictly a legal thing. But we police ourselves, and we'll talk more about that later. Duties to realtors would, let me just see, I don't think we have anything, 12, 30, 40, no. Duty to realtors is no false and misleading statements about other realtors. You never want to speak poorly about anybody, right? You don't bring somebody down to build yourself up. We are better than that, to be sure. 16, don't solicit clients that have already signed exclusive listings with another agent. So what happens is you go on a listing agreement and you come back and you go, that was fantastic. I think we got along so well. We bonded. I really think I'm going to get this listing. And the next day you go on the MLS and there is the listing with another agent. And the first thing you do is call that person and say, please, I don't understand what went wrong. I thought everything went so well. What happened? No phone call, no further contact with anyone. If it's listed with another agent, you do not represent them. You have no discussions with them directly going forward. If, however, they call you to say, I just want to let you know, we're giving the listing to another agent. It had nothing to do with you. You were terrific, but my aunt's in this business and I have to give it to her. Well, there are things that you can say to that, but we can talk about that later too. But the bottom line is that if somebody calls you to say thank you, but be grateful, because most people don't have that consideration, and be aware, follow that listing, because if that listing doesn't sell, you really have a great opportunity to take that listing over when the listing expires. So you never walk away, you never badmouth, you never, call your client, I can't believe you did that to me, that was so mean. Nothing. You just let it roll, because sometimes it comes back to you, and more times than not, you'd be very surprised when that happens. And then 17 is contractual disputes will be mediated and arbitrated by the board, which is how we handle ourselves and what we do. So now I want to discuss and read the Attorney General Memorandum. This is on fair housing. It is housing discrimination laws, and every single listing that you take, this must be given to the seller, or you are in jeopardy of losing your license. It is that critical and that simple. This is why you need to know what it says so that you are confident in what you're doing. So I will share my screen and we will read it together. So this is what it looks like. It's from the Attorney General of the state of New Jersey. And it says the New Jersey Real Estate Commission, REC, requires every licensed broker or salesperson with whom you list your property to give you a copy of this notice. This purpose is to help you comply with the New Jersey Law Against Discrimination, LAD, and the Fair Chance in Housing Act, which we will discuss. Laws against discrimination. Under the LAD, it is illegal to discriminate against a prospective or current buyer or tenant because of actual or perceived race, religion, national origin, nationality, ancestry, pregnancy or breastfeeding, sex, gender identity or expression, sexual orientation, familiar status, defined as having care or custody of a child under the age of 18 or being pregnant, disability, liability for service in the armed forces of the United States, martial status, civil union status, or domestic partnership status. It also is illegal to discriminate against a prospective or current buyer or tenant because of any source of lawful income to be used for rental or mortgage payments. It is illegal to make, print, and publish any statement, including print advertising and online postings, expressing any preference, limitation, or discrimination based on any of those protected classes, like we read in Section 3 of the Code. LAD and 10. The LAD applies to a wide range of activities such as advertising, selling, renting, leasing, subleasing, assigning, and showing properties, including open land. Here are some issues that come up frequently enforcing the LAD. The prohibition on discrimination based on source of lawful income means, for example, that a landlord cannot reject a prospective tenant because they intend to pay with subsidies or vouchers provided by federal, state, or local rental assistance programs, including Section 8 housing vouchers, COVID-19 emergency rental programs, state rental assistance programs, temporary rental assistance, eviction prevention programs, unemployment benefits, child support, alimony, and supplemental security income. A housing provider cannot advertise a property in any way that discriminates based on a source of lawful income, including by posting advertisements that state directly or indirectly a refusal to accept or express any limitation on vouchers or subsidies. For example, advertisements that say no Section 8, TRA not accepted, or this property is not approved for Section 8 violate the LAD. Absolutely unkosher. In addition, housing providers must calculate any minimum income requirement, financial standard, or income standard based only on the portion of rent to be paid by the tenant rather than the entire rental amount. So in Section 8 and temporary things like that, the state may pay all or part of their rent. So you need to know what their responsibilities are with a letter of or voucher is really what it is. The LAD prohibits bias-based harassment in housing, including sexual harassment. If a tenant is being subjected to bias-based harassment that creates a hostile environment, and if the housing provider knew and should have known about it, the housing provider must take reasonable steps to stop it. That includes harassment by other tenants and by a housing provider's agents and employees. Quid pro quo sexual harassment, for example, where a building superintendent demands sex or sexual favors as a condition of making necessary repairs, is also prohibited. During COVID, we had those people going, if you couldn't pay your rent, the superintendents were asking for sex. So believe me, there are reasons that people do report people. Housing providers must reasonably accommodate tenants with disabilities unless doing so would be an undue burden on their operation. For example, if a tenant shows they have a disability that keeping an emotional support animal is necessary to afford them an equal opportunity to use and enjoy the dwelling, the housing provider must permit the emotional support animal, even despite a no pets policy, unless they can show that doing so would be an undue burden. This is a huge issue, and this is how renters get around a no pet policy. They ask their doctor to give them a letter saying that they need to have their dog or cat as their support animal. This has caused the rental market to stand on its head. So understand this becomes a very big issue with rentals. Okay, and that's where it says, but understand that this section, even though they're both the same as far as fair housing, this is for support animal. A support animal is not a service dog. A support animal is an emotional needed pet. So a support animal is a pet. A service dog is a working animal. So a no pets rule cannot be enforced against a person with a disability who has a service or guide animal. A landlord may not charge a tenant with a disability for an extra fee for keeping a service or guide animal or support animal, because the support animal is also covered under fair housing. Now, certain things, places like airlines have changed their rules because they can charge. So they now do not have to accept emotional support animals unless they charge for them. So you can take your dog or cat on a plane, but you can no longer take your support peacock, your support squirrel, your support pig, your support pony. It's limited to a dog or a cat. Service animals are always, I believe, always dogs. And service animals are for people who have disabilities, and that can be seen or not seen. Everybody knows that a service or guide dog is used for the blind, but service dogs are used for people who have diabetes, for people who have epilepsy, because dogs can sense when a seizure is coming on, and they can sense when there's a problem with sugar. So you may not be aware why somebody is having a service animal or support animal, nor is it any of your business. But just know that they are always allowed everywhere. And what you will see now in restaurants will say pets are not permitted. Service dogs, welcome. Pets, support animal. Service dogs, working. Landlords must permit a tenant with a disability at the tenant's own expense to make reasonable modifications to the premises if such modifications are needed to give the tenant an equal opportunity to use or enjoy the dwelling. So if somebody is in a wheelchair and they want to rent a second floor apartment and somehow do a ramp like this to get up there, do you think that that would be an undue burden? I would. But if they asked for it on the first floor, would that be an undue burden? No, the tenant would have to rent a ramp. And then when the tenant left, the tenant would remove that ramp. And the tenant would pay for the installation, the rental, and the move-in.
Amy,
And
I have a
that
question.
Yeah, sure.
Going back to the emotional support animal and the service animal. So I actually had this question with a renter because it said no pets on the listing. It wasn't a guide dog, it wasn't a service animal, but it was an emotional support animal, a dog. So for us representing renters, an emotional support animal and a guide animal, it doesn't matter what the terminology is. Is that what you're saying?
No, it does matter what the terminology is because they have different definitions, right? So we have a support, which is a pet. We have a service, which is a working dog. They are both covered under fair housing.
Okay.
Service animal is a service animal. That has nothing. Support animal has to be accepted also, but the terminology is definitely different.
So the terminology is different, but both of them, if it says no pets, they both don't count as pets.
That is correct.
Okay.
Now, the
One
worst
other
thing,
question.
I'm sorry?
But one letter from one doctor is normally enough
Believe it or not.
for an emotional dog, not a service.
Yes. Now, what was happening was that people were spending $15 going online and getting a letter from Idaho, from a doctor in Idaho going, I need emotional support. So Ben Carson, when he was the head of HUD, Housing and Urban Development, he at least put some form of limitation on it. And so there are some requirements like or safety protocols put in there. So you can't say you can't have a support animal, you can't have that type of support animal. If it's an aggressive animal that could cause a problem to other tenants, yes. Now here's interesting. You've got a condo development and you've got somebody with a service animal, a support animal, not a service animal. And they go into the clubhouse with the support animal, the dog, and there is a owner of a unit in the community room that is highly allergic to dogs and starts having an asthma attack? Whose right is it to be in there? The support animal rules. Isn't that crazy? And that condominium had to work out different hours from when the support animal could be there and when this person could be there. But a support animal is protected by fair housing. We will get more into support animals when we do our rental section, so I don't want to take away too much time from this. We will be visiting this again, trust me. And just as a point of information, your homework assignment is to read the back of section 1, and one of the articles is on service and support animals. So you will gain a little bit more insight. So anyway, as far as being able to do a ramp for a first floor is not an undue burden. In addition, and if a tenant, let's say there's no assigned parking in the parking lot, a tenant with a disability can request a spot directly in front of their unit under this section and be protected, because that would not put an undue burden on the landlord to do that for the tenant. So there are things that the landlord will do because it's not an undue burden, but if it is an undue burden, they don't have to do it. LAD prohibits discrimination based on familiar status. For example, discrimination against families with children under the age of 18 and pregnant people. Landlords similarly cannot use unreasonable occupancy restrictions to prevent families with children from moving in. So another article in the back of section 1 is, can a family of 7 live here? You need to read these, and we will be talking about them at the beginning of class on Tuesday. Selectively inquiring about or requesting information about and or documentation of a prospective tenant's or buyer's immigration or citizenship status because of a person's actual or perceived national origin, race or ethnicity, or otherwise discriminating on such a basis is violation of the LAD. As explained in the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's April 2016 guidance document, because of the widespread racial and ethnic disparities in the criminal justice system, blanket policies that make all individuals with any prior arrest or criminal conviction ineligible to rent violates both the LAD and the Federal Fair Housing Act because they have a disparate impact on race or national origin and are not supported by a legitimate business necessity. And housing providers may not use criminal history as a pretext for intentionally discriminating based on race or national origin. For example, by applying criminal record based on restrictions against Black housing applicants, but not white housing applicants. So understand that now the rules have changed, and we will go through this, but you are only allowed to do a credit check when first meeting tenants. You cannot do a background check. And why? Because what the LAD is telling us is that there are more people in prison that are people of color or a different national origin. And coming out of prison, it was very difficult to decide or differentiate what they were discriminating. Were they discriminating on color or national origin? Or were they discriminating based on somebody who has a criminal record? So in order to prevent people from discriminating on the criminal side, they are only allowed to do a credit check first. So that doesn't come into play until if the landlord wants a background check. I will tell you that as far as I know, and I'll verify this with Roberta, but not one landlord has requested a background check since this has been in effect, which has been a year. So know that people aren't doing background checks as much as we thought they were. So, but if you are found in that you have been discriminating, these are the penalties. If you commit discriminatory housing practice that violates the LAD, you may be subject to penalties up to $10,000 for your first violation, up to $25,000 for your second violation within 5 years of the first offense, and up to $50,000 for 2 more violations within 7 years. Other remedies: victims of discrimination may recover economic damages related to the discrimination, such as having to pay higher rent for another unit, as well as damages for emotional distress, pain, and humiliation. And in more egregious cases, the victim may also recover punitive, which none of that is covered under your E&O. And punitive damage is treble, so it's 3 times what the verdict is. Brokers. The broker or salesperson with whom you list your property must transmit to you every written offer they receive on your property. Brokers and salespersons are licensed by the New Jersey Real Estate Commission, and their activities are subject to the LAD as well as general real estate laws of the state and the Commission's own rules and regulations. The broker or salesperson must refuse your listing if you indicate to intend to discriminate on any basis prohibited by the LAD. I have been put in that position before when I'm sitting taking a listing and we're going over these things, and the seller says to me, "Don't you bring a person of color into this house." And I say, the only color I see or care about is green. And if you are going to have a problem with any other color, I cannot take your listing. End of story. Okay. Fair Chance and Housing Act. This is the act that we were talking about in regards so that we don't discriminate based on just criminal record. So the FCHA provides housing providers from asking about renters' applicants' criminal records on an initial application or otherwise considering an applicant's criminal record in any way until after they've made a conditional housing offer to the applicant, with limited exceptions as required under federal law. The goal of the FCHA is to ensure that formerly incarcerated and system-involved people have fair access to housing around the state. Nothing about the FCHA requires landlords or housing providers to consider a person's criminal record in housing. If a housing provider does review an applicant's criminal history after a conditional offer, specific restrictions apply. A housing provider must conduct an individualized analysis of the applicant's criminal record and may only deny housing if withdrawing a conditional offer is necessary to fill a substantial, legitimate, and non-discriminatory interest. Here are some of the specific requirements for housing providers under the FCHA. Housing providers are prohibited from asking applicants' criminal records until after they've made a conditional housing offer, except for convictions of drug-related criminal activity for the manufacture or production of methamphetamines on the premise of federally assisted housing, or if the applicant is subject to lifetime registration in a state sex offender registry. Even after a conditional offer, a housing provider may not consider arrests or charges that did not result in a criminal conviction, expunge convictions, convictions erased through executive pardon, vacated or otherwise legally nullified convictions, juvenile adjudications of the delinquency, and sealed records. If a housing provider chooses to consider an applicant's criminal history after a conditional offer, they may only consider the following types: convictions for murder, aggravated sexual assault, kidnapping, arson, human trafficking, sexual assault, endangering the welfare of a child in violation of that code, convictions for any crime that requires a lifetime sex offender registration, any first-degree indictable offense or release from prison for that offense within the past 6 years, any second or third-degree indictable offense or release from prison for that offense within the past 4 years, or any fourth degree indictable offense from release from prison for that offense within the past 1 year. So let's say for some reason you receive a criminal report that says a fourth degree of indictable offense, he was released from prison 2 years ago, that would violate the LAD and would not be an issue because it is not allowed to be past 1 year. So this is your rules and restrictions that will be on a background check, except the background check company we work with, NTN, they follow this law. It's only if a landlord uses their own source for a background check that is not compliant with the law. Most will be compliant, so you shouldn't have to worry about it, but it is an issue to be aware of. For a conviction that can be considered, a housing provider must conduct an individualized analysis that includes the nature and severity of the offense, the applicant's age and at the time of the offense, how recently the offense occurred, any information the applicant provided in their favor since the offense, if the offense happened again in the future, whether that would impact the safety of other tenants or property, and whether the offense happened on or was connected to a property that the applicant had rented or leased. If the housing provider intends to consider criminal history as provided for under the FCHA, after a conditional offer, they cannot accept an application fee before disclosing that fact to the applicant and offering the applicant an opportunity to provide evidence of inaccuracies in their criminal record, other evidence of rehabilitation or mitigating factors. This requirement can be fulfilled using a model disclosure statement, which is in our ZipLogic, ZipLogic is our transaction management system. So it is always going to be in your rental room. If the housing provider withdraws a conditional offer based on criminal record, they must explain in writing their justification for doing so, which can be fulfilled using the model notice of withdrawal, which we also have in our Zip room. An applicant can then request the information the housing provider relied on and can submit mitigating information or inaccuracies relating to aspects of their criminal record, which may be considered under the FCHA, which the housing provider must then consider. If the housing provider utilizes any vendor, outside person, or entity to conduct the criminal record check on their behalf, they shall take reasonable steps to ensure that the vendor or outside person or entity is conducting the criminal record check consistent with the requirements of the FCHA. Just like I said, when we use NTN and somebody may use a different one, this is what would be considered. If the housing provider will be liable under the FCHA for relying on criminal history inquiry conducted by a vendor or outside person or entity that is conducted in violation of the FCHA if it failed to take reasonable steps to ensure the compliance. Housing providers are prohibited from discrimination against those with criminal records in advertising, notices, or publications. They also cannot require applicants to submit drug or alcohol testing or to provide information from a treatment center. Penalties: if you violate the FCHA, you may be subject to penalties up to $1,000 for your first violation within 5 years of the complaint, up to $5,000 for the second year violation within 5 years of the complaint, and up to $10,000 for 2 or more violations within 7 years. And the DCR may authorize other remedies depending on the circumstance. And then everyone signs now, your owner and you. So you would print and sign, your owner would print and sign. So that's how serious it is. You better come back from your listing appointment with a listing agreement, but this has to be signed and put into your zip room. Everybody good with that? That's the Attorney General memorandum. Let's just go back here. And I want to talk about one more thing. Well, not one more thing, a few more things. Love letters. Love letters came about several years ago. And what it was that as a buyer's agent, you don't get to present your offer because the seller's agent usually presents your offer. But you want them to know about your clients and why they should be picked. And in this market of craziness where you may have 5 or 6 or 10 buyers for a particular house, you want to make it sound more wonderful. So buyers started writing letters to the sellers why they would love to live in their house. But by doing so, they were actually violating the fair housing, because they were saying, we love your house. We can picture my daughter walking down that staircase when she was getting married. And that family room with that beautiful fireplace, we can picture celebrating Christmas and the tree right over there. But then you have a buyer who, my husband and I love this house. We can't wait to have our friends and family love Eric. Now, people might be homophobic and would rather see a family live in their home. So they were maybe making choices based on the letters that they were reading and what they wanted for a buyer, because they had all these buyers to choose from. That's where it became a problem with fair housing. One state, Oregon, it made the letters illegal, and then through appeal had to make it legal again because they were saying it takes away your First Amendment right to free speech. But it is a fair housing concern. So what you would do is, if you're listing a property, you explain this to your sellers and say, you should not take any love letters because you could be sued based on fair housing. And once they hear that, they don't want the love letters because they don't want to be potentially sued. So you can say that, or you can tell your buyer, if you are going to write a letter, it cannot have anything to do with children, location, anything that's a protected class. You could say, I love the house. I love what you used as the exterior is beautiful. The flow is fantastic. Your kitchen is gorgeous. But I can't say I can't wait to see that gorgeous kitchen filled with, my friends, my family, and my children, because that would go against fair housing. And in print, if you are an owner occupied rental, right? So the owner lives in the rental, they can discriminate. They just can't advertise it. They can discriminate because they live there. But if they don't live there, no can do. So now I want to talk about agency. Agency is, let me just get out of this and go into consumer information statement. Oh, that was fun. So the consumer information statement is about agency. And remember, I told you in the very beginning of our conversation that Randy Keytybe was our broker of record and that you see that on our door. Well, we at Prominent Properties have 15 offices, okay? Those 15 offices are all under the same broker of record, Randy Keytybe, which makes all of us, our names are Randy Keytybe, all of us. It doesn't matter what office you're in. It doesn't matter where you work. It matters that you work with Prominent Properties, Sotheby's International Realty, and your broker of record is Randy Keytybe. So I am Randy, Ann is Randy, Victor is Randy, Alyssa is Randy. We all work in different places. And if Ann represents the seller, we all represent the seller, whether we've met the seller, whether we've been to the seller's home. But because Ann has a listing agreement with Prominent Properties, Sotheby's, her broker of record is Randy Keetive. Our broker of record is Keetive. That is all of our listings. We are all dual agents with that listing. Now, if someone from Prominent Properties brings in the buyer, we are all dual agents representing the buyer and the seller because we have one broker of record. Does that make sense to everyone? If it doesn't, please speak now, because this is the entire crux of disclosed dual agency. And for our company, we do not like to have the listing agent, the exact listing agent whose name is on the listing agreement, represent a buyer with their name and their buyer. So that if Michelle was on the listing agreement and Michelle had a buyer, Michelle's manager needs to take control over that buyer so that Michelle is not handling the seller and the buyers of that property at the same time. Now, if Michelle was the listing agent and Rachel had the buyer, no problem. But if Michelle's buyer wants to see that house, Michelle should have her manager take the buyer in. The manager will not charge commission. You will still get your same commission as you would, but it sort of blurs the line of dual agency and it gives everybody one center person to communicate with. So the sellers would communicate with Michelle, but the buyers would communicate with me as their manager, as her manager. And this way they feel that they have somebody to talk to, but please make no misunderstandings. We are still dual agents. Confidential information does not pass through any channels when you are a disclosed agent. So you cannot tell a buyer that a seller will take less than what they have offered as listing price. And you cannot tell a seller a buyer can afford more than what they've offered. Confidential information must stay confidential. That is the important part of dual agency. So understand, please understand that when you have your own listing, don't show it to a buyer, let your manager do it. Or you can, if you're a team leader, as the team leader, you're the one usually going out and getting the listings and then distributing who's going to bring in the buyer for you, and that's fine. But if it's your name on the listing agreement, please make sure you have a team member, your manager, or another agent handle the transaction however you decide you want to do that. Okay, so that's under agency. And we're not going to read the CIS this time because we're going to read it when we do all of our forms. Just know that the CIS is the first document you discuss with any buyer or seller on your first phone call. And what it is, and you've gone over this in school, is that the consumer information statements describes how real estate licensees are required to disclose how and what capacity we are going to work with our buyers, our sellers, our landlords, and our tenants. And if it's a seller's agent only, which I will say that most nobody does anymore, seller's agent only would prohibit us from bringing any buyers in. Why is that? Why could we not bring in a prominent property buyer to a seller only listing?
Because we haven't had the agreement on the disclosed dual agency.
Correct. Right? So You always have to think of your arrangements. So as a seller's agent, if you bring a buyer agent in, what are you going to be? A dual agent. And did they agree to dual agency? No. So if you had a seller who only wanted seller's agency, you nor 800 other prominent property agents could not bring a buyer in. And you would have to make that known in the MLS. You could do a broker's open house, a public open house as the seller's agent, but you could not get a client from that. And if you did get a client from that, you couldn't show them that house.
But when you get the listing, you're supposed to have the dual agency signed at that time, right?
It's what your sellers and buyers want, not what you want.
No, but you asked them to sell that, no?
You ask them how, representation, you're giving them this and you're saying, I would like to work with you as I could work with you as a seller's agent, but that means that 800 of my agents cannot show your home to their buyers because we'd be dual agents. Are you okay with that? And most of the time they say no. Then will you be okay with a seller's agent with disclosed dual agency should the opportunity arise? Yes.
Right, okay.
And that's how you handle it. But if they say to you, oh, no, I want seller's agent only or buyer's agent only, what can't you do if you are a buyer's agent only? Just think about it. What can't you do if you're a buyer's agent only?
Show them any Sotheby's.
Exactly. You can't show them any of our properties because then you'd be a dual agent. So all you have to do is explain to a buyer, I can't show you that property because that's our listing and I would be a dual agent. You have chosen not to have me. If for some reason you get a buyer or a seller that refuses to do dual agency, there is a different form that we have in our system. It's elect not to work with dual agent, and they would have to sign that. And knowing they could change their mind at any time. If they do change their mind and want to be a dual agent, have you be a dual agent, you would just redo your CIS and have them check off dual agency, and that's how you change their status. And it does happen. So just be aware, seller's agent only, buyer's agent only, very rare, especially in this market, because people are looking for exclusive listings from each brokerage. So they don't want to be nailed down to one particular company. So that would be buyer's agent only, seller's agent only. That would be seller's agent only is also landlord agent only. Buyer's agent only would be tenant agent only, because that's how the CIS is written. And then there is disclosed dual agency, which is when we do represent a buyer and a seller. And it means anybody from prominent properties that has a buyer or a seller. And then there's transaction broker, and a transaction broker represents no one. In our state, very few people are transaction agents unless it's usually a for sale by owner who wants in on the NJMLS. And if they want a listing, then they have to pay this transaction broker money, but not as much money, and they can negotiate terms. So we will read all of that later and in depth, but I wanted you to understand what agency is, what it looks like, what your obligations are. Your obligations are to get this signed and get informed consent to dual agency. And once you have those two things signed, your obligation, legality-wise, is over as far as the forms that need to be signed when you're working with a buyer or a seller. So we will formalize that as we go on so that you understand what your requirements are better. And we use our transaction management system to have everything electronically signed, unless, of course, you're dealing with people who are uncomfortable with technology. And then we have other sources for you. So we will talk about that part later. Now we are going to talk about, hold on. I want to talk to you about where we are, which is professionalism. So we believe very strongly that how you present yourself is a reflection on you, but it's also a reflection on us. So obviously, professionalism is hugely important to prominent properties. And so we look at this in all different kinds of ways, because when you come to this business, the only thing you have is your name. That's the only thing you have. If that gets tarnished, it's really not a great way to do business. So just be cognizant of the fact that you really want to do everything the right way, the best way, so that you are running your business the most efficient manner you possibly can. So what does that mean? That means following the do not call registry. It means sending out your CIS and your informed consent. It means being truthful. It means acting openly and honestly and fairly with all customers. So we want how you handle yourself to be just that. We want you to act professional, but we also want you to feel professional. So with that comes your appearance. To think that I've had to send adults home to change is mind-boggling to me as a manager. But when somebody says they're going on a listing appointment for a $1.5 to $2 million house, and they are wearing a t-shirt or they are wearing beach gear, I'm going to speak up as the manager and say, if you are not aware of what professional attire is, then I'm going to have to help you be aware of what professional attire is. That does not mean you need to wear a suit, a tie, a dress every day of your life. But you can also spend $100, $250 on a pair of strategically cut jeans. But a $25 pair of dark jeans, the right boot, and a jacket will get you way further. And if you ever question, and this is for guys, you don't need to wear suit and ties. You can wear just like what you are wearing. Everybody's wearing a collar. It could be a polo shirt. It could be anything, but it should be a collared shirt, not a t-shirt. And you can wear a V-neck sweater with a blazer over it. You can do that. People say, I want to dress like my clients. Well, as a seller and as a buyer, I want to know who's the real estate agent in the room. I don't want to come and I just think it's not a professional. One of my agents who's not my agent any longer, I say this is a few years ago, came to the office for uptime, which is when any leads that come in, any phone calls, any walk-ins you would get. She came to the office, I mean, directly out of the gym, wearing her gym clothes, her sneakers, her hair still plastered down in the back from sweating. And this is how she came to the office. And I said to her, you have two choices. You could go home and stay there, or you can go home and get changed and come back, because I will not allow you to go out looking like that. And I will not have you tarnish our relationship based on your comfort level. That is not acceptable behavior. So there's a common sense here thing, guys, which I think you all have. And use it. Use your common sense. First of all, when you look professional, you feel professional. When you're wearing all comfy clothes and you're hanging out, you're hanging out. So I would just ask you to think about what you look like when you go out, and this is why I'm telling you this. So I wasn't an active agent forever. So, I also work regular hours. So my only time that I go food shopping is like 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. And I would roll out of bed and put my hair wherever I went. I'd get myself up and out until I met and saw somebody I did not want to see looking like that. And I sit there and I preach to people how you want to be seen, because in this business, you're seen by everybody every day, no matter where you are. Everyone you meet is a potential lead anywhere you are. You do not want to look like me and hide behind the aisle until that person has passed. Yes, I have done that. So you always want to look your best, whatever that is. It doesn't mean you have to dress up every day, but I've learned to put on like a little bit of makeup so I don't scare people. And I, have learned to at least walk out of my house in that manner, because I am meeting people all the time. And I don't want to look anything else, but, at least decent enough that I can hold a conversation and not have to hide about it. So bottom line, that's kind of the thought process with how we act, how we look, and the tools in which we use. So a perfect example of that is how technology has changed since I have been a realtor. So how does technology change? First of all, there wasn't really an MLS. There was, but we used books. We didn't have access to the computer. And every 6 months, a sold book would come out, and that's how we did our comps. So now we have a plethora of MLSs. We used to, for fair housing, believe it or not, how the industry was policed in fair housing. And maybe like somebody like Joanne, who's been in the industry as long as I have, we used to have to write pink cards for anybody that came in that was a different nationality, a different color, or biracial couples. We would have to write it down in pink. And I finally, one day I looked at my dad and I said, isn't this being discriminating by highlighting and pointing out the fact that we're working with somebody different? But that's how things have changed, evolved in our industry. There were no cell phones when I started. There weren't even pagers. We thought we were the hoi polloi when we got pagers. And then we got cell phones, and my first cell phone was like this big. And then as it scaled down, I remember getting my first smartphone before anybody knew what a smartphone was. I didn't even know I bought a smartphone. But what it had was a keyboard that I could type a text. And I thought that was just the end of everything. We thought we were it and a box of chips. And so you can understand, now I am no spring chicken. Learning technology as and then 40, 50, and 60-year-old is not fun. So keeping up with technology, what we learned very quickly as an industry, because as an industry, the average agent's age was 54. We were all held to a higher standard, and we had to learn technology. We had to learn things. So from here on out, guys, you will start learning different technology to help you grow and keep up. Because if you don't, the people behind you coming up in the forces are going to. So you need to keep up with technology, tools of the trade, literally no more flip phones. You need smartphones, you need iPads, you need laptops, you need some absolutely digital phones, some not. You may want a light ring like I invested, because hopefully you'll be doing video. All of these things become essential to who you are and how you do your job. So always learn. I remember when Matterport came out, which is 3D virtual tours, and we were trying to do video and realized there were no such thing. We didn't have stabilizer bars. Now, and you could spend, it was hundreds of dollars then. I think they're $35 now for a stabilizer bar. So if you're all going, well, what's a stabilizer bar? That's what I mean about technology and knowing what your tools are of the trade. So a stabilizer bar is what you would put your cell phone to at the very end, and it helps so that it keeps your cell phone straight and you don't get this, video of you walking where you actually see people walking. Nothing gets you more disoriented when you're watching a video of somebody than watching the room move with you. So, if you are going to do things like podcasts, get yourself a good microphone. Seriously, get yourself a good, I have a separate camera on my phone, on my computer, rather than the computer camera itself. I have AirPods, but I haven't charged them, so I can't use them today. So understand the business, understand what would give you the most effect, and that's what you're going to buy. I had an agent who, when doing her business planning every year, allotted she would buy a piece of equipment every year and update her equipment and do things like that and put it right into her business plan. Just like in business planning, you put money aside for marketing and how much you're going to spend a year. So these are things that you would plan for. And if video is how you're going to be, think of what you're going to need to do video. If you're going to do a blog or a vlog, what are you going to need? If you're going to do an iCast or a podcast, what are you going to need? If you're going to do photography, what are you going to need? Now, we have a professional photographer who goes out on every listing and takes pictures of your houses, because they have to be up to not just PPSIR standards, Sotheby's standards, and they have to be approved by Sotheby's. So we have a professional who does go out and take your photos for you. But there will be times that you may want to take your own photos for rentals or things like that. And you want to make sure your photos look good and professional, which would also mean understanding what you're photographing. And we'll talk about that when you're the listing agent and making sure things are photo ready. So with that said, your homework assignment is to read all of the backup articles to section 1. Everything that we talked about is in section 1 manual. Everything that I just went over is in the first part, and then the backup articles are in the second part. I really am interested in hearing what you think about some of the articles. I've seen people's videos go on and off. As I said, I really would like to keep your video on if at all possible, because it is imperative for me to know by facial expressions whether you actually are understanding what I am talking about or not. So anyway, our next class will be on Tuesday, 9:30 to 11:30. What I will say to you every Thursday is this: take the opportunity to go out into your marketplace or your secondary marketplace and go visit open houses. Get your list of open houses. If you're not on a multiple yet, get the list of open houses from your manager. And then make sure you start with your own offices. If they have any open houses, go to see that first, because you need to know what listings your office has. Speak to the listing agent in your office. If it's not on tour, ask if you can get a tour with them and ask that then to show you the house. You need to know your inventory. You need to know what houses are out there. What do they look like? Because if you do get a customer, you want to be able to relate, discuss other houses that you've seen or have been out there and compare them. How do they stand up with what you're showing them? So please talk to your manager, go out and go to open houses and just start looking. How are you looking at the house? When you walk in, you look at the ceiling, you look at the floor, you look at the walls. Are they covered? Are they painted? What do you notice? What do you see? What kind of windows are they? Are they old windows? Are they new replacement windows? What kind of ceilings do they have? Are they vaulted? Are they tray? Which we will talk all about that in case you don't know. Cathedral, well, all of that stuff. How does it feel to be in the house? What does the light look like? What does the property look like? What does the street look like? Pay attention to all of these things. This is now your livelihood, and all of these things matter. So as you're looking, because when you're a listing agent, all of these little things matter. They paint the picture of the house. And then when you're talking to a buyer, you're painting that same picture. And you may see things in a house and say, all right, it needs work, but this could fit 70 people in here. And you hear from one of your buyers that they entertain all the time, they need great flow, and you go, I know just the house. It needs work, but the basic foundation is fantastic. That's the advice you give. That's the strength of you as a realtor, is to help. You don't sell houses, you show houses. What you give them is your experience, your eye, your thoughts, but the way you develop them is by knowing the market, knowing the price points, knowing what comes with a price point, and then explaining it to somebody. And, say listen to what they say, but think on your own and independently. So I had a buyer who said to me, do not show me a cape ever. Okay, she visualized a cape in a certain way. We're going to talk all about this and I'll go into more detail, but she envisioned it to be one way. I went into a house that was a cape that had every single thing this woman wanted. I didn't tell her it was a cape. I brought her to the house. I showed it to her. She started to cry from the minute she walked in. The whole time I didn't even know what was going on until the end. And she said to me, this is my dream house. I've never thought I could have a house like this. And I looked at her and I said, this is a cape. But she was so fixated on the cape, but I was fixated on what her needs were. That's what's going to make you a good agent. So go out, take a look at houses, look at them, really take notes, remember what you're looking at. And that's the information that you start with. And the more houses you see, the more you're going to be able to say, oh, this and this were the same price, but this is larger square footage. This is better. This is more finished, but this could be this for this amount of money. And that's where you're really going to grow. So that is your job. Read the articles and go out on tour. And if you don't have your own business cards, your office should have office cards, or ask your marketing rep to make you business cards temporarily so you can go out and leave a card. Okay? And when you go to an open house with somebody else as an agent, just say hi and present your card. I'm previewing it for a customer. That's all. And then you just walk around the house yourself and take your time. And if you have any questions, ask the listing agent. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You just don't want to come off as new, because you don't want to say, oh, you're new. No, just ask any kind of questions you may have, but look through the house first and see if the house answers your question. And if it doesn't, ask. Any questions from any of you regarding any of the things we've discussed, not discussed, or anything else? No, you're all good?
I can't make it on Tuesdays to the training, so.
Okay, just shoot me an email on Tuesday so I remember to send you a copy of the class.
Okay.
Okay? All right, guys, then have a great weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday.
Great, thank you.
Be well.
Very good.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Bye-bye.